All right, joining us now is former law clerk to Justice Neil Gorsuch and founder and president for the Article 3 Project, Mike Davis. Mike, glad to have you with us today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about the Supreme Court and presidential immunity. I've heard some skepticism as to what the outcome might be. I know it's been your prediction that Trump will prevail in this case. Tell us why.
I think the Supreme Court is going to rule 5-4, maybe 6-3, depending on how Justice Amy Coney Barrett comes down, that the President of the United States, any President of the United States, is immune from criminal prosecution for their official acts, not their personal acts, their official acts, because the Supreme Court made it very clear at oral argument yesterday that they understand that if there's not, you're going to see the presidency destroyed and therefore our country destroyed. Members of Congress are immune from criminal prosecution for their official acts. So are federal judges. Why the hell would the president of the United States not be?
Yeah, well, Mike, let's talk about how you define official acts, because we've gone 230 years without the presidency being disrupted from the threat of being criminally prosecuted after leaving office. So doesn't this really come down to what is an official act and what is not, what's a private act, and who should decide that?
I think the Supreme Court is going to remand this case. They're going to hold very narrowly that there is a criminal immunity for official acts. They're going to remand this case to D.C. Obama Judge Tanya Chutkan. She's going to have to hold an evidentiary hearing with witnesses, and she's going to have to make the first determination what are official acts. For example, Jack Smith alleges that Trump was contemplating firing his acting attorney general. That's clearly an official act. A private citizen can't do that. So that's one example. And then Judge Chutkan's going to have to determine what are personal acts. And then the Supreme Court, in the meantime, is going to decide the Fisher case on the obstruction charges against President Trump and these January 6 defendants, where the Biden Justice Department contorted federal law, this post-Enron obstruction statute, to go after corporate malfeasance, to go after their political enemies. The Supreme Court's likely going to reverse that. So there goes 2 of the 4 charges by Jack Smith against Trump. And then after this presidential immunity hearing by Chutkan and the appeals, the immediate appeal to the D.C. Circuit and even the Supreme Court again, I bet you 20% of Jack Smith's case is going to remain after this process is done. It's not going to get tried before the election. President Trump is going to win, and his acting attorney general on day one is going to correctly dismiss these bogus charges with prejudice and make them go away.
Speaking about bogus charges, Mike, we got a live look at the courthouse there in Manhattan, where Trump has been spending a lot of time, of course. A lot of people watching this, it's tough to follow because, as Bob mentioned earlier, there are no cameras in the courtroom. We're hearing from reporters what's been going on in the exchanges. There's a lot of news coming out. But Kim Strassel in the Wall Street Journal had a great piece talking about Alvin Bragg and the Democrats' election interference. And she says, let's march the entire political class to their jail cells now and save donors and courts the costs. Many should already be there under the Bragg concealment theory in terms of how it was concealed, the paying off of Stormy Daniels. She talks about Hillary Clinton and the DNC and what they did in 2016 with Russia and so forth. And you think about how many, could also be facing similar consequences, but aren't because their names aren't Donald Trump. They're not the front runner going into the 2024 election. Your thoughts on that and just the precedent being set here?
This is a criminal conspiracy by these Democrats, prosecutors and judges and witnesses and operatives, the Biden Justice Department, the Biden White House, President Biden himself, these various attorneys general and DAs, Alvin Bragg, Fani Willis, the Arizona Democrat attorney general who just stole the election from Abe by disenfranchising voters on Election Day. This is a criminal conspiracy to violate President Trump's civil rights, along with co-defendant Walt Nada, 18 co-defendants in Georgia, the defendants in Arizona, where Trump is now an unindicted co-conspirator. This is unacceptable what these Democrats are doing. They're waging lawfare and election interference, and they are the real criminals for doing this. And the Trump 47 Justice Department must open a criminal probe on day one, because this is unacceptable. This is how the Roman Republic fell. It was the lawfare against Caesar that forced him to cross the Rubicon from Gaul to Rome, that led to the Civil War and the fall of the Roman Republic. We're not going to civil war, but we can't have, in America, we can't have the destruction of our political enemies, the destruction of the presidency, and therefore the destruction of our country through this lawfare and election interference. They've crossed a red line. This is completely unacceptable, and there must be the most severe legal, political, and financial consequences.
Yeah, there really should be. Can't wait for that November election and to see that accountability coming in the next year. Mike Davis, always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.